We're talking about filters, Spring Boot security filters. So, what are the filters? Filters, uh, you can also say them as a middleware. In some another language like Node.js, there is a concept of middleware, and in Spring Boot, these are called filters. So, firstly, we are talking about security, so we just discuss about authentication and authorization. What is authentication? Still just think about the authentication. The authentication is nothing, it's just it's just proving who you are. It depends on your identity. Okay, so it's, you can say that it is the process of verifying who you are. So like when you enter in some website, so you just type your name, password, and the website check from the database that the user exists or not. So this is called authentication. And authorization, after the website verify you that you are the user that exists in the database and you have a full authenticity to enter the website. But after entering the website, what you can perform, like when you are in some e-commerce website, can you add a product? Can you delete a product not from cart, from screen, or from the database? Okay, and can you uh, check the request of the other users. So there we provide some roles, like if I have a role user and you have a role admin, so I can only perform the task that are specific for the user, like adding the card to the product and like making the payment. But if you are admin, you can cancel my request, you can accept my order. That can be processed by authorization. Okay, so now we see this diagram where we deeply understand about the filter chains. Okay, so filter chains are nothing else, it's just a middleware. Middleware, like the middle functions that are executed before the controller and after the request or a response. After the request of server, when we do the request, it directly enter into your controller. But before entering into controller, there if we have to filter something, if we have to authenticate, if we have to parts, if we have to perform some logging, then we can do all of them in a filter chain. Okay, so when user submit a request, it goes through the various filter chain. And today we are talking about security filter chain. So it goes to the authentication filter. Authentication filter just send your request object to authentication manager, and now it's proper responsibility of manager to validate you or to provide a proper authentication and authorization for the request. Okay, so manager just called the authenticate function for the authentication purpose. The request went to the authentication provider, and generally we mostly use the authentication provider. The concept of the working of DAO authentication provider is that it generally accept the object, and he performed two tasks. First, he fetched the user detail from the database. If through the name that we specify the name in our object, so it fetched the user detail from the database. After getting the complete user detail, he just search for the password, and the password is in hashing format. The password is in the hashing format. In hashing format, so how can you perform hashing in the password? There is just a password, and we perform decryption encoding. We just use decrypt encoder for encoding this, and also include some salt. So the process that we just combine our password with some salt, and then the total string goes for the encoding. After the encode, it just add to our database. So it just fetch that encrypted password and extract the salt part, because because salt is totally a random value. So we don't have to focus on the salt. It just for the main security purpose for making our password more strong. And then authentication provider take your object and fetch the password and encode that password. So we have two passwords. we have two password. One that you enter at the time at now, and the second that authentication provider fetch from the database. He just match both of them, and if the request is if the password match, say if the password match or unmatch, he just create an object with proper values like the is password match or what are the roles of the user. So and then send the response to authentication manager. Authentication manager send to authentication filter, and authentication filter just send the context of the security. So if we set one-time context, so users are totally able to do the required authentic and authorized work through the security context. So we don't have to repeatedly call the database for every time. So now every controller, and before entering into controller, just check the security context. If it is set for the authenticated, then you just enter into the controller and then perform some task.